Today, we're going to talk about one of the greatest challenges of the anxious attachment style, which is how to self soothe when they perceive lost connection. Hi, if you're new to this channel, my name is Tom Philp, and I've been working with adults for years that struggle with relational trauma to regain trust in themselves and others so that they can experience a safe and secure relationship. One of the things that really is difficult for the more anxious style of attachment is being able to self-soothe. Now, there's some things they do really well. There's some things I think all of us could learn from them. One of the things that they do great is that when they love hard. When they decide to let somebody into their life, when they decide that somebody has earned their trust, they give their whole self to that relationship. They are 1,000% in, and they are all in for that partner, and they'll do anything to preserve the relationship. And I quite frankly think that's something we all could learn from them, because certainly that's different from the more avoidant style of attachment that tends oftentimes to want relationships but always kind of have one foot out, so to speak. I'm not saying they're not committed. I'm just saying that there's always a little bit of space they need to have between themselves and their partner to preserve their own sense of identity and to preserve what feels like their autonomy or independence. That's not the case with the more anxious style. When they are in a relationship, they're 1,000% in. And I love that about them. And all the couples that I work with, that's one of the things that I always make sure I point out. They need to know that about themselves, that in this relationship or any relationship, when you feel a sense of lost connection, your body knows what to do. It knows to jump in and try to reestablish that connection as soon as possible. But this also leads to one of the greatest challenges for the more anxious style of attachment, and that is being able to self-soothe, being able to regulate oneself, maybe even before the conversation happens, but certainly during the conversation, or even when they start to slightly perceive disconnection with their partner. And so a scenario that I see often is where a more anxious style and a more avoidant style might be sitting down talking with each other, because that is the most common pair bond. And when the more avoidant style feels like the conversation is getting a little too stressful, a little too intense, then they start to emotionally pull away or shut down. Usually this is indicated in the partner's eyes. And so I'll often ask the more anxious partner, what is it that you see? Oh, I see this like dead look in her eyes. And that's the moment I know she starts to shut down. Or I just see this look of disinterest on his face. And that's the moment it just sort of hits me like I'm losing my partner. He's pulling away. He's shutting down. I'm no longer being listened to, really. And it sends all kinds of negative messages to the more anxious partner. So even if it's in those moments, what can the partner do to overcome one of their greatest challenges, which is be able to self-soothe in those moments? Because if that partner is able to self-soothe, then they can show up differently, and they can learn, at least for their part, how to break that cycle. Now, the partner's got to learn their stuff too, right? They've got to be able to learn how to stay emotionally engaged, not become overwhelmed with emotion. They've got their own work to be done as well. And working with thousands of couples as I have through the years, I very much see this as a system that is maintained by two people. It's not one person or the other's fault, so to speak. It is a system that is maintained and supported by both partners when they get caught in this consistent loop. So what the more anxious person needs to be able to do is they need to be able to relax, and they need to be able to self-soothe. There was a show years and years ago. It was a mockumentary called Spinal Tap. And in one of the scenes, the beloved director, Rob Reiner, was talking to one of the bandmates, and they were looking at an amplifier. And they were noticing how one of the knobs on the amplifier goes up all the way to 11, whereas all the other knobs go up to 10. 10's the loudest you can get it, but this one is one louder. It goes up to 11. And that's a little bit like a metaphor I think about when I feel my way into the more anxious attachment style partner, right? I'm always thinking, oh, your knob is just turned up to 11 right now. Anytime you perceive distance or disconnection and it makes you uncomfortable, that knob gets turned up to 11. Not even just 10, but it goes all the way. One more goes all the way to 11. And so in my mind, the way I think about this is, what can you do to sort of turn down the volume? What can you do to turn that down to maybe a 5 or a 6 so that you feel more regulated in yourself? And part of what that's going to do is it's going to spill into the relationship. And it's absolutely going to come across differently. And it's probably going to force the partner to respond differently. And this is part of how we begin to break these cycles. So I've got a 3-step process that I want to talk about to help you be able to turn down that volume from an 11 to maybe a 5 or maybe a 6. The first thing you need to be able to do is orient and name what you're feeling. This is step number 1. So when you start to get anxious, can you recognize where that's located in your body? Is it all over your core? Is it located primarily in your stomach? Do you feel like a heaviness in your shoulders? What is it that you are feeling in your body? Because your body's sending you signals. So the first thing you need to do is orient, and then you need to name. You need to be able to say, I'm scared right now. I'm really anxious because my partner is pulling away. I'm really scared right now because we're going to go back into our old cycle where I'm having to pry information out of my partner. I'm having to do all the work in the relationship. And this leaves me scared that my partner is going to shut down. And so just naming and orienting and focusing inward, where am I feeling that? And can I name it? That's step number 1. Step number 2 is, how can I regulate this feeling a little bit better? This is where we turn down the volume. You might try something like this. Can you put your hand over your heart? And can you just say to yourself, everything's going to be all right. I know my partner cares about me. And even though this might be difficult for them right now, I know they love me, and they'll eventually get to a point where they can hear me. Even though this is hard and scary right now, I know that we can get through this. We've gone through this before. We can get through this again. So being able to try to say something soothing to yourself is very important, because what that's going to do is it's going to try to turn down the volume. Another thing you can do is just put your hand over your heart and do the 6-4-4 technique of breathing. Take a very deep breath in for 6 seconds. Hold it for 4 seconds. And then breathe out for 4 seconds. What you're trying to do there is relax your body. And when you breathe in, it turns on your parasympathetic nervous system. And when you breathe out, it turns on your sympathetic nervous system. I might have those reversed. But basically what it does is it turns on and upregulates you, and then it turns off and deregulates you. When you do that a few times, you can actually feel your body start to calm down. So maybe saying something reassuring to you about this anxiety you feel is helpful. Maybe just doing some breath work. Put your hand on your chest or wherever you locate that anxiety, telling yourself, I know I'm scared right now. I know I feel super anxious at disconnection. Let me take some deep breaths and let me calm myself down. Step number 3, access internal resources to help comfort you. So while you've got your hand over your heart or maybe on your stomach, wherever you're locating the fear, the anxiety, evoke a memory of a loved one. Bring back a grandmother who loved and delighted in you every time she saw you. Evoke a parent that always made you feel safe, a best friend, a teacher, anybody in your life that you knew was 100% on your team, that they loved you, adored you, delighted in you. It's almost as if you could do no wrong in their eyes. Evoke their image. Evoke what they would tell you in this time, in these moments. Would they come and wrap their arms around you and tell you everything's going to be all right? Would they be able to sit down and listen to all of your feelings and all of your emotions going on inside you right now? And they would just sit, and they were so empathic and so understanding, and they'd help you make sense of all those feelings. Whatever that person would do for you, I want you to invoke their memory, because they live inside you and your relationship with them lives inside you. So as you've got your hand over to your heart and as you're saying it's all going to be okay, you can get through this. Also think about the people in your life who you know are 100% there for you. Doesn't matter who it is, best friend, teacher, parent, grandmother, grandfather, whomever it might be. Could be just a neighbor's mother that you grew up with that you always thought was just so kind and so gentle. And every time she saw you, she would just light up at seeing you. Doesn't matter who it is. Anybody that makes you feel loved and cared for in your life, you have them inside you. Evoke their memory and remember that can offer you comfort and reassurance in these moments. So the real challenge is being able to learn how to soothe yourself in these moments, because when you do, you can show up differently to your partner. You can turn down the volume from 11 to 5 or 6, and what that's going to do, that's going to force your partner to show up differently too. So not only are you helping yourself, but you're going to help your relationship as a whole as well.